your family, your community, your country, your responsibility. Be the best citizen you can be. Click on the Leaders Say banner on this website to find out about your rights and responsibilities.
Thank you for downloading this podcast from The Reedy Clubby Show on Talk Radio 702 and 567 Cape Talk. For more, please go to 702.co.za or capetalk.co.za.
7 minutes past 9 o'clock. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Friday edition of the show. And we are together until 12 midday. And you know, on a Friday, we're meant to take it easy, to have a laugh, to delve into very light topics. But I think that the situation does not allow for that. Now, let me just get this out of the way. We are not going to have the naked scientist, and we are not going to have Nick Rabinovitz either. I know that some of you are already rushing to your email to send a litany of complaints and abusive emails. I understand how you feel, but there is a time when decisions are made that you don't like. We simply have to be grown up about it. We've taken a decision as a team and in consultation with our programming managers, our seniors, that it would be inappropriate to have a comedy or to even break the first hour of the show because there is a crisis. And we need to have a conversation as South Africans, a conversation that will transcend the mere expression of dismay and shock, a conversation that would transcend the mere condemnation of the situation, and find solutions and talk about the kind of future we want for our country. I've dealt with this issue in my Sunday Times column. So if you're reading it and you kind of hearing this for the second 100th time, that's fine. This is the biggest story, I think, this week. I think the issue for me is I understand that we all have a different perspective on history, a different way of analyzing history. And maybe some of us or some of you would invoke our violent past. But the struggle or the response to apartheid was not initially violent. There were attempts to negotiate, to talk, and a decision was taken years later. So we can negotiate. We can create a new culture. And even if our history is littered with stories of bloodshed and savagery, there are many nations who've been here before. How do they move forward? How can we move forward? And I cannot accept that because of our violent past, then we fall back to that and use that as an excuse. We have a violent past, but we don't have to be it doesn't have to permeate our present and our future. So this is what's going to happen. I want your reaction to the images that you've seen. Well done to our journalists who are out there bringing the story as it unfolds. Eyewitness News did a splendid job, and you can go onto our website to see the video and images as put together by Taurai and Gian Nicolaides as well for days and days and days before this whole thing erupted and degenerated into what it is now. Eyewitness News was there. I think the E-News channel also did a fabulous job of bringing the images to us so that we really get a sense of what is going on. I do think that all sorts of people have been available to speak, especially, the NUM has been all over, even voluntarily phoning radio programs to give their perspective. Even this morning, we will try to speak to them. We'll try to speak to Amku. I can understand that Ria Pierre has her hands full. It is important to speak to the nation, but it's equally important for her to be there. So we understand if they're not present. The Minister of Police did speak to John Robbie earlier this morning, and different police spokespeople have been available at different times. This is a crisis, and we understand people are working. However, we did try. We tried to get hold of Lonmin. At the beginning of this crisis, I think Lonmin was speaking to various newspapers. We spent the whole morning trying to get hold of them. Here's the story. As you and I, as the country reels in shock and deaths at the Marikana mine. The company has released a statement saying its CEO was ill, and I understand he is gravely ill and has been so before this crisis started. But we were told, the statement said, the day-to-day running of the business would be taken over by Executive Committee member Roger Phillimore. He's not speaking. They're not speaking. Nobody's available at Lonmin to speak. A few minutes ago, we phoned. Mava, did we phone or send an SMS? We phoned. We phoned and SMS'd. We phoned the spokesperson to say, the country's burning. We are on tenterhooks. We want to know how we got here. We also want to hear your side of the story and start to explore solutions together. We received a text message after 8 this morning from Bernard Mukwena, the Executive Vice President of Human Capital and Executive Affairs at Lonmin Mine. And he says, this is exactly what he's written. I'm going through therapy and counseling. That's what he said. The spokesperson of the company that is the headquarters of such bloodshed, savagery, and brutality has sent an SMS to say he cannot account for his company. He cannot speak to us because he's going through therapy and counseling. I think this is cowardly. This is unacceptable. And I think it is showing the middle finger, not just to the honest workers who are peace-loving and are looking for leadership at a time like this. I think, Lonmin, you are showing South Africans the middle finger. You are going through therapy. What about the rest of the country? What about the rest of the workers? What about those who've been threatened and intimidated? What about the innocent lives that has been lost? Is this how you manage the mine generally, where you disappear at a time of crisis? Is it then true what my next guest is going to tell us? I'm going to speak to John Capel, who's the executive director of a foundation that has done a lot of work on platinum mines in the Northwest. And he says the macho culture is a major social ill behind the flare-up of violence that has left at least 30 people dead. They've done 5 years of research among communities in the platinum belt. And this report by Benchmarks Foundation highlights the gap between mining companies' promises and their practices on the ground. And he says the violence is partly caused by union rivalry. Let's not ignore that. The working conditions may not be behind this. That's what Numi's saying. Numi's saying we negotiated a better deal last year, so what is this protest about? So it could be genuinely about conditions, but how it's playing itself out, there seems to be some inter-union politics. Anyway, my guest, John Capel, says the violence is partly caused by union rivalry, but the bigger social ills that have been brought in by mining are erupting here. He says companies have made many false promises and there's huge community resentment as a result. Surely Lonmin needs to come to the party and account for their side, because the story is much broader than the violence that we are seeing today. So that is the story. He's going through therapy and counseling, and someone put super glue between his lips and he cannot speak. 021-446-0567, 011-883-0702. We want your perspectives based on what you've seen. We'll get different commentary and analysis from unions, from researchers, and so on. Let's go to Dick in Winchester. Hi.
Hi, Lady. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm very well, thanks. Baby, I just want to comment about this whole issue. It's said that in this day and age, such savagery attack can happen. But at the same time, I know we're running high and emotions are continuing to run high, where some people are blaming police. Having looked at the images from ETV, I find reason to simply say at times you need to look at the police, the position that the police were in. They were under attack. They were being confronted. Be it that it may be, it shows lack of respect for law. Because even under the struggle day, when we said Marikana Debunked, we're sitting in front of police and will act with discipline. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that I've actually picked up. That the leadership, there was no leadership, basically. People hijack genuine concerns of work and turn them into a different battle altogether. which was rowdy in certain instances. I can't condone the action of Lonely. But at the same time, who do you negotiate with? If someone stand on the other side and someone say, it's either you give me this or not. You know? Someone not coming onto the table. I don't know the facts in totality. But the understanding is that someone was demanding 100% increase. Be it right or wrong, there's a need for conversation. And in my analysis, the whole week was all about attack. You know, it is so sad that people were being attacked. Some of them were very armed to the tooth, you know, to the last extent. And that tells you that it was no longer a struggle against low wages. It was a violent type of an approach. So my concern, really, obviously, one of the things is that we need to look at it from two sides. That police were under attack. Also, there was no discipline that was actually being shown by the leadership of the group. So police must do their work.
All right, Dick, I think you have made your point. Let's go to Smatzaza in Kwatema. Hi.
Thank you, Rudy. Part of my I was partly covered by the previous speaker. We are suffering here. We're reaping the fruits of the culture of impunity. Remember that we have a history of violent strikes where no one is ever convicted. You know, from the train strikes, Satao strikes, up to violent protests. And what do police have to do in a situation where they are going in and people are armed to the teeth? Just now we've just heard that rubber bullets are going to be done away with. Yet we know that protesters and are always armed. What must police do? And they went there, the police had already been bludgeoned to death with pangas and other stuff. What must they do? I think we need to spare a thought for the police.
Okay, all right, that's Mazatsa in Kwatama. Let's take a break. When we return, Theo Nkoni, who is Eyewitness News reporter, will paint a picture of what's happening now, and I'll continue to take your calls. Please hold on. Okay, let's go to Theo Ngonki, who is Eyewitness News reporter, to paint a picture for us. You are in Rustenburg. Theo, good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Rudy.
What's happening this morning?
Well, this morning, Rudy, it seems very quiet for now. I say that because I've just spoken to a security guard who is heavily armed and is keeping watch on what is happening here. And he told me that normally throughout this week, these miners would gather at the communal kitchen here and regroup and then go to the hilltop where they start protesting. Indeed, we drove through the township and we saw a group of men, about 200 people standing around the kitchen. So I think we don't know what is going to happen, but it's quiet for now. There's a helicopter hovering above the township to check what the situation looks like.
And as far as a turnout at the mine itself, we try to speak to various people. They're telling us they're not speaking. They're focusing on mining operations. I can't imagine that anyone is reporting for duty this morning.
You're right, Rudy. No one, we were at the mine, no one has shown up for work except for office staff. You are right when you say the mine itself has not been talking to us after the incident yesterday. They keep referring us to the police or the Department of Police itself.
And I understand that some police authorities will be there, including the National Commissioner. Do we have any clarity on that?
Yes, National Commissioner Ria Piecha is expected to hold a press conference this morning. And we've also seen a Minister of Minerals and Mines, Susan Shabangu. She is in the Marikana area as we speak. Ria Piecha will clarify, for instance, the death toll. We've been getting mixed reports about how many people were killed yesterday, and we'll hear from her what is the situation like.
Thank you very much. That's Theo Ngonki, and of course Gian Nicolaides is also there. They'll be bringing us developments as they unfold. It seems that an uneasy calm has returned in the area. Over 30 deaths as confirmed by the police minister. How did we get here? That's what we're talking about. There are many of you who are SMSing saying that the police used excessive force and so on. Well, you know what? I suppose there'll be others who will look at the situation that way. But the fact is, it wasn't the first time that the police went in. They went in before and lost 2 of their members. And our response, I think, just my personal opinion, we are allowed to disagree, our response to what happened yesterday must take into account the gamut of this entire saga from beginning to end. And I also have questions. I have questions. That's why we make the platform available so that we can ask those questions. I have questions around strikers, whatever their grievances, who bring weapons to the party. Isn't that an intention to fight and to kill? Will you argue that these are traditional weapons? They are not if they are being used to hack and kill people. So I'm just thinking, if I am a decision maker in the police and my guys went in initially to maintain law and order and they were unprepared, ambushed, and 2 of them died, facing an armed mob. The second time around, when I return, what would I do? I would beef up my resources, because you clearly are not dealing with people who are committed to resolving the situation. They want bloodshed and to stamp their authority. That's my perspective. What is yours? Let's go to Ubageng in Pretoria. Hi.
Hi, Reddy. You know, my view on this, I think, 2 police were killed, and I don't know where is our intelligence here, because according to how I saw, the police were revenging. That's my view, because they went there knowing that these people killed our forces, and then we must go there and we must fight fire with fire. That's what they've done there. And we don't have to say anything, because intelligence was supposed to view that, no, these police were here from Monday, and then they have lost one of their own, and then why don't we change or maybe deploy soldiers? Because these ones, they are angry. They are going to be angry with those ones. And the commissioner had a meeting already with the management of that mine. She didn't even go to the ground, to the people who are striking, to understand the view. And the last time when I called, I think people thought maybe I have a problem with the appointment of the minister. I'm not blaming not the minister, the commissioner. But you see, that work really, it needs someone who understands the ground. That woman, she's an administrator, and I still stand with my words that it needs someone who will understand what is going on in the ground. That woman, she didn't understand it. She went there and made a meeting in the aircons with the mine, and then what happened now? The meeting on Tuesday, here we come, 30 lives are gone.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ubageng. Thank you. That's Ubageng in Pretoria. Antonio in Montgomery Park. Hi.
Really, thank you for taking my call. Really, I think the violence must be condemned, and I think there can be no justification. But really, I want to focus on events leading up to these strikes. I think for me, there's a lack of capacity and often a lack of willingness on the part of managers and owners to engage and to really spend the adequate resources on the engagement process. I mean, just the response that we're getting as a public from Lonman after this event is indicative of what preceded this event in terms of what engagement happened, what willingness there were. I mean, for you to have a company in crisis and for the spokesperson to be sending you that SMS, I mean, you shouldn't even be having the audacity to comment, in terms of his personal state. He should have just referred you to someone else. But to comment like that, I mean, it's not a one-man show. We're talking about a company with a board of directors, and even if the CEO is in hospital, where's the chairman? Where's the board members?
They've got human resource, they've got chairman, they've got different representatives, yeah?
So for me, if that's how they engage the public, if that's how they engage an intellectual public, how do they engage these workers? We always focus on the symptom, when people lose their lives like this. But the negotiations and the discussions that lead up to these events, those incidents never get the real focus. And I think there's genuinely a lack of capacity in a lot of HR departments in how to deal with this, not at the time of negotiating salary, but in terms of doing a regular temperature check in terms of what are the conditions of the work, what are the things that can be cause violence, and there's a genuine ignorance to say that, we'll deal with it when it comes to negotiation times, but then it's too late. So for me, I really, I feel for the police that have lost their lives, but as the previous caller said, I think there was no plan going into this, warfield yesterday, and I think sending in people who have lost colleagues might have been the wrong call as far as the police is concerned, because those guys and they had just lost two of their members, and with utterance from the previous commissioner, I can imagine what was on those guys' head. There was a lady that called in on John Robbie's show, and she said,
"Sorry, Antonio, we have to break and take news. I'm sorry, I have given you a chance. Let's just give other people a chance, but we are late for news at the moment, and there's lots happening on this Lonmin issue. I'm sorry about that." 24 minutes to 10 o'clock now. This, I think, has been one of the bloodiest labor disputes in the post-1994 era. There are various reasons for that. We've spoken about inter-union rivalry, and this is not speculation. There are people saying, "Oh, we don't have the facts." I had both unions here on Tuesday, AMCU and NUM, and they were both pointing the finger at each other. And NUM's point of view is that we negotiated a salary increase, a wage deal last year. Our members were not striking. AMCU argued during that discussion and debate that NUM is starting the violence because we are making inroads into its membership. So they are saying there is a conflict between them, not me. But what is the bigger issue here? What are the bigger social ills? Is there an opportunity from this savagery, this brutality, to talk about the social ills that have been brought to the fore as a result? Let's welcome John Capel, who's the Executive Director of Benchmark Foundation. Good morning to you, John. Welcome.
Good day, Reedy, and thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. Just to give our listeners some context, you did, and I mean Benchmark Foundation, you did 5 years worth of research among communities in the Platinum Belt. Tell me about it.
Right. I mean, yes, we did this 5 years research, and we found social ills, social problems, high levels of subcontracted labor, low wages, the mushrooming of informal settlements, squatter camps, and operations around Marikana where workers stay is appalling. It's like a junkyard. I also want to tell you something else. That yesterday, the president of the South African Council of Churches and the chairperson of the Benchmark Foundation, Bishop Joe Siolka, met with the striking workers just before the shootings. The striking workers said, "Look here, all we want is management to come and talk to us." And then they went to management. Management said, no. They weren't prepared to go and talk to these workers. They wanted a smaller committee, that the workers were armed. But, I don't believe that. And secondly, last year, London dismissed 9,000 workers for an illegal strike. And this has also probably led to this particular situation. And I cannot understand that police brutality. I think it's one of the worst events we've ever experienced in our democracy. It reminds me of Sharpeville, that the police surely should have had proper negotiators going in. If my chairperson, Bishop Joe Siolka, could go in and talk to these workers, there was room for negotiation and for discussion, and this did not happen.
All right, we'll talk about this later, because it's also an issue that has come up in our open line. I do want to go back to the research. You
Right.
talk about the macho culture at platinum mines in the Northwest as being a major social ill behind the flare-up. Can you elaborate on that?
The what culture?
Macho.
Oh, yes. I think that's got an issue to do with how do you employ women in the labor force,
Mm-hmm.
And where say Anglo Platinum, so they meet their target of 10 or 12% of women in the mining industry. But these women don't have, according to our study, have separate change rooms and facilities. They groped in the lifts that are going down underground. A female geologist told us she has to carry a knife on her to protect herself, etc. So it is this kind of culture. And I think there's also a culture amongst these corporations trying to tell us how responsible they are, how they respect the communities and their host operations, and how they are committed. And Lonman say, we are committed ethical people, in their sort of statements to society. So part of our study looks at what these corporations say about themselves, but what are the actual practices on the ground? And we have community monitors in all of these areas, daily reporting on events. And I know with the issue from Lonman's yesterday, our monitors reported that the workers were ready to come to some kind of settlement from what we hear. And then when my chairperson tried to go back to report back to the workers, they heard the gunshots, the police were there, etc. But there are lots of social ills with a high level of subcontracted labor, living in appalling conditions, communities being impacted upon in terms of water, in terms of air quality, in terms of not getting jobs in the mining industry. And that's the biggest demand of communities, and they feel they suffer the hardships, they suffer the consequences, and they don't benefit. This problem is much bigger than Lonmin's. It's a problem that Impala's had. It's a problem that's going to spread across to other countries. Even Royal Bafokeng Platinum are suffering problems. There have been a number of community protests over the last year, and around Lonmin's there's been 2, for example. So there's a huge discontent in the communities. There's huge discontent in the labor force, and I don't believe that this issue started out as a union rivalry issue. It started out when Lonmin workers were protesting outside Lonmin's gates, and Lonmin security guards shot dead 3 workers. Then later on, another 3 union workers got killed, and then 3 policemen got killed, and so the thing has escalated. But I put the blame at the door of Lonmin's.
Just talk to me about the access that the workers that you spoke to in this research feel they have to management. And I'll tell you why I'm asking this, because your report highlights the gaps between companies' promises and their practices on the ground. So are they speaking to the workers and they're telling them lies, or they're not speaking at all? And the nature of that communication, is it top-down? Can miners just approach management or any representative, use their unions to represent them, to talk about whatever they want to management to address?
Well, I think in this case, the onus was on Lonmin's to go and really address those workers, and not try to put it onto the unions, even though their unions are supposed to represent their members. There was a bigger problem here, and I think that these workers were frustrated, that there was an agreement signed, and that they and they rock drillers and around productivity bonuses, and we've seen these strikes in Impala, and we saw 3 workers getting killed, and we see a repetition of this. I think there's a failed system. I don't believe that these mining companies are taking seriously either the issue of their labor and the disgruntled workforce under the conditions that they work in. And when it comes to communities, I can tell you now they really bypass communities. They hardly talk to the genuine representatives of communities, and hence all the community protests in the last year, many of them unreported.
So how do we move forward from? There's something else that I wanted to ask about the what has been called the center, one of the causes of the violence that we have seen, that there are subcontracts. Let me rephrase it. Lonmin Platinum subcontracts up to 1/3 of its jobs to outsiders. That would obviously then jeopardize the miners or potential miners' chances of getting employment. How is that a factor in this whole saga?
This issue of subcontracted labor is done through labor brokers, who compete for the lowest tender for these companies. So these workers earn very, very low wages. They're very disgruntled, number one. They are pushed out, onto informal communities because no proper accommodation is provided for them in terms of houses, etc., etc. They're given some kind of small living out allowance on the whole, workers, and they can't afford a proper accommodation. So this means that there's this mushroom of informal settlements, squatter camps, backyard shacks, etc., putting pressure on local resources, causing huge disgruntlement in communities that are around mining already, that have to bear the consequence of this. I think that's the one point. I think we need, in moving forward, we need a full investigation and commission of inquiry at the highest level to investigate the whole issue of labor and subcontracting and migrant labor, living conditions of workers, etc. I just want to make one last point. In the apartheid days, if mines, I'll give the example of Welkom, wanted to go mine there, They had to build all the infrastructure, the roads, the clinics, the hospitals, schools, housing, etc. Since 94, they've escaped all of this. And so we have retrogressive sort of practices within the whole mining industry. And as much as that they would like us to believe that they are promoting socio-economic development in communities, they are not.
But John, how much of this responsibility falls back to the miners? Because I hear all these things that you're saying, and I agree with you that violence is a manifestation of bigger social ills. But we are dealing here with people who seem to be bloodthirsty. They go on protest marches with weapons. How much of that can we put on the shoulders of how much of this blame can we put on the shoulders of the strikers themselves?
Really, I worked in the trade unions in the 90s, and I remember very, very big strikes like, say, at Haggy Rand or at Firestone and whatever. And workers always came out in their traditional dress and their knobkerries to show a sense of power, you know. And I used to go into these situations. And I was never, ever threatened. It's more a show of power, and you know, it's not necessarily a threat. I think workers in this situation were very, very angry, and what one needed was top-level negotiators to go in and to calm the situation down. I think our chairperson yesterday, Bishop Joe Sawker, had that opportunity, but was blocked from going back in, and then these workers were shot at. You know? You and I are going to have to agree to disagree on that one, John. But thank you very much for talking to us about the report. Right. Thank you very much.
That's John. I mean, you want to have a holistic look on the entire situation to talk about what the mining companies have not done. But in my view, it does not justify the level of violence, the brutality that we have seen. And the fact that you have to show this power. Okay, fine. Display your weapon. But why did they use these weapons to hack and kill people and intimidate people? And how gory was that story of, as reported by a SAPA reporter, that a skull of an animal was left on the chest of one of the victims? We can't be politically correct about that level of violence. It is shocking. It is revolting. Let's take a break. We'll take more of your calls in a moment. Okay, now this report also looked at one of, by the way, Lonmin is one of 6 platinum belt mining companies. So this report is not on Lonmin only. It's on all of those. And they're saying that the mines failed to meet their social, economic and environmental commitments. And they're talking about the Lonmin supported school in Marikana, which was built with asbestosis. They're talking about some of the corporate social responsibility commitments that were not met. I hear all of that. I hear all of it. But how do we explain this violence? How do we explain this? Is there anything that can justify the savagery? And I'm still waiting for someone to answer the question about strikers who go on a strike carrying weapons. What is the intention there? There are pictures of them licking their pangas and all sorts of things. So what were they planning to do? Let's go to Jackson Mthembu, the spokesperson for the ANC. Good morning, Jackson.
Good morning, Reddy. We are all saddened. We are very saddened. And I agree with you that, how do you, even if you have a case, you want better working conditions, indeed you withdraw your labor for as long as you can. But to carry weapons and weapons of destruction, guns, high-powered guns, and even disarm police of weaponry, what does that say? What is the intention? Mm-hmm. We are not saying this because we are not aware of the sadness that is prevailing within communities whose breadwinners have lost their lives. Indeed, we would like to pass our condolences to all those. But again, that's why as ANC was saying, we therefore need a high-powered investigation, high-powered, high-profile commission of inquiry to look into this spate of violence that has erupted not only at Lonmin, but of course, you will know that Lonmin in the past week, we have lost about 45 lives. Maybe we are still losing some as we speak now. Therefore, as government and as people of South Africa, we think that we cannot fold our arms and hands and pretend as if nothing has happened. We need to go to the bottom of this. Is this still about labor matters, labor disputes, or are we seeing low intensity warfare here. I mean, if people are carrying arms, even if there is rivalry between unions, some of us are from a union background. There's always been rivalry. But rivalry doesn't mean that you need to kill the other union members or the other shop stewards. It doesn't mean that. Immediately that happens, that's murder. That's crime. What we should also be trying to get to the bottom with this high-powered investigation, if there have been no arrest ever since these killings happened, why there haven't been any arrests?
Okay. Thank you very much for calling us, Jackson. Thanks indeed. Jackson Tembu is a spokesperson of the ANC. We're taking different calls on this one, and I'll tell you who else will be joining us in this conversation. Keith in Sandton, you are the chairman of a company that was involved with Lonmin and the intentions to build the school?
Yes, good morning to you, Reedy. First and foremost, I've heard so much negativeness going on. We as a company are very proud to have been involved with Lonmin. We built world-class new technology alternative building method schools, which they donated many millions of rands to the community in terms of new schooling. And I think, we've got to start looking at some of the positives that have come out from this company and from the community, that they got together and they built some beautiful schools with world-class green technology, some of which were built by us. And, I think it's time that we need to find a solution and rather blame at each other and to look at some of the positive stuff, really, that's come out of this.
But, Keith, this is not the time to be looking at that. Over 30 people are dead, and we're trying to find out why. And if Lonmin could have handled the situation better, if it's the strikers who are ambushing the genuine cause of workers and they're arriving at protest actions with arms, then we need to be talking about it. It's all very well to say, they did this. We're looking at what happened this week. What happened this week?
Yes, I agree with you that this is not correct behavior, but at the same time, I think that eventually we all have to turn around and start to look at each other in a better light. Well, I'm sorry, Keith, but in a week that 30 people have been killed, including police, we must be talking about how Lonmin has built a school with asbestosis. I was also very involved with the South African police. I was a CPF member in Sandton. I can assure you that the police would have taken this thing very seriously, obviously, and done the very best they could have before they opened fire. I'm sure they would have.
But the issue, you're phoning to defend Lonmin, and I'm saying it's all very well to talk about this great school. The fact of the matter is that 30 people have died.
I agree
and
with
we're
you.
not only questioning Lonmin, we're questioning the police, we're questioning the miners, we're questioning the unions.
I couldn't agree with you more. It needs to be questioned, but at the same time, out of every evil action, if we could just have one positive action, it would start to calm the situation down. And we must also look at good things rather than just only at bad things. And I'm very sorry to hear, and I'm extremely saddened to hear that we are revolving around this issue of death.
All right. Thank you, Keith, for calling. Thank you. I'm going to have to let you go. You and I are going to have to agree to disagree in terms of how we look at this. I think positive news, there's a place for them. But at a time like this, when we are talking about the bloodiest labor dispute ever since 1994, over 30 people dead, and we should be talking about how great Lonmin built a school, and even that has been criticized in the report, that the school was built with asbestos, not asbestosis. Asbestosis is a condition, but asbestos. And I suppose as someone who was involved in building the school, that would be your priority. My priority is to talk about the deaths of 30 people and to say, I do not want my country to go down the drain and to be the platform for bloodshed and savagery. You talk about the school, but we have other priorities. Let me just read some of the SMSs and tweets that have come through. Obviously, different perspectives about the police and that they used excessive force. Some of you saying the police were acted within reason and limits. Chris says the severity of the violence can only be attributed to the lack of leadership in our country, unions, management, and the government. And Khomozo says, the pictures, spears, pangas coming out of Lonmin reminded me of Katlehong and Togoza. Union leaders are irresponsible. This is what Khomozo is saying. And an SMS says, Reedy, I personally believe, this is from Clinton Harting, says, I personally believe the union that put these false promises or wage increases and getting the workers worked up are to blame. Really, I'm not sure what's going on in the saga, but if there was a union that promised a 200% wage increase, then they must account for the false promises they made. Okay, and some SMSs coming in as well. Really, I grew up in a township that had a hostel that housed migrant workers in the early 90s who worked at the sugar mills. I witnessed political violence on a regular basis, and for years my father kept 3 pangas, 5 nopkiris, and an assortment of whips under his bed. He still does. Often there would be people marching the streets armed to the teeth. No one condemned it. I don't think this view of violence suddenly disappeared post-94. And I think the conditions at Lonmin, combined with all these other factors you've discussed and this continuing culture of violence, contributed to the current situation. It's an SMS from Chris. Dion says, this happens when there is lawlessness. It's true, we need a conversation about how we are going to debrief as a nation. Is there anybody who can give us perspectives on that one? Okay, let's quickly speak to the NUM. Lisiba Sishoka is joining us. Lisiba, good morning and welcome.
Good morning to you, Ridi, and to the listeners.
Thank you very much. Okay, a lot has happened since I last spoke to the NUM. I read in the papers yesterday that when the NUM tried to address workers, the NUM representative was booed and kicked out of the mines. What do you make of all of this?
Well, we are making nothing out of it, especially given the fact that if you look at at Lonmin employs about 28,000 workers. And only a fraction of that 28,000, which is about 2,000, were booing the leadership of the NUM. And secondly, if you look at that, some of those workers were brought from Carrier, where the so-called rival union have got a majority. Other than that, throughout Lonmin's 3 other operations, the NUM is a majority union that represents 68% of the workforce. So to us, it's not wrong to be booed. If people don't like you, it's fine. They have got the freedom to associate with the others that they want to associate with.
But here's the problem here, Lisiba, and I want to give you a chance. We'll give AMCU a chance as well. That the argument from NUM is that there were no worker grievances in as far as wage demands were concerned, that you negotiated a deal with management last year, and that is the deal that has been implemented, and you don't know where justification for this protest action comes from.
Well, true, really. Let's look at the situation. We enter into bargaining throughout the mining industry. We first look at who is the representative of the workers, the majority union, and we look at all the other unions that are there. For instance, at Lonmin, there are 4 unions that are recognized there for bargaining purposes because they've got a majority members, and that is the NUM, that is SEPAU, that is Solidarity and UASA. So as the 4 unions, we entered into negotiations with Lonmin and agreed on a 2-year deal. And you must bear in mind that when we talk about agreeing, it's not the leadership or the negotiators that agree, it is the members that attend a meeting and then vote on the deal that is on the table. So on that basis, we agreed on a 2-year deal. So there is no dispute, wage dispute anywhere. What we are seeing is that there's been false promises given to these workers that they can get 12,500 increase, which is a 200% increment. And this is actually similar to what happened at Implas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Lisiba, here's what I want to know from you. You are the union that is in the majority at Lonmin as well as many other mines. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And AMCU, I've been reading that it does not have the numbers, even though it is growing, it doesn't have the numbers to negotiate on behalf of all the workers. Is this not a lesson that regardless of the size of AMCU, that perhaps as NUM, you should not be seeing them only as a rival union, but as people whose voice matters when it comes to mining issues and labor issues, and perhaps involve them in any negotiations with workers? Is that possible?
Well, really, I don't agree with that, because in a sense, you are saying to me that democracy should not be allowed to prevail. You see, we have got 9 provinces. It is like saying to me that in the political dispensation, out of the 9 provinces, Zille may be allowed. I'm just giving a practical example. To bus people from the Western Cape into another province, and then say, based on these people that I've bussed here, I demand that I am a majority and you must listen to me. That is totally irresponsible.
No. I'm saying that you are in the majority as NUM, right? But the fact of the matter is that there are miners that belong to AMCU. So even though AMCU is in the minority, is there an opportunity for both unions that represent the workers, you in the majority and them in the minority, to work together? Because it would avoid a situation where you go in as NUM, you settle with with employers on a wage deal, and then a few months down the line, here comes this union coming with its own with its own promises, and it's what you call false promises.
You see, really, it's something that perhaps we could explore. But I mean, if you are a minority union, then you will have to come forward and say, I have got 1,000 workers. They are not here at Carrier. They are at Marikana. And I want you to please bear with me. For instance, if you look at Lonmin, they have allowed them, they've given them offices, although they don't qualify in terms of bargaining processes. And we have not had a problem. I mean, throughout the years, we have got unions such as Trade Union Solidarity and UASA that do not necessarily have got the necessary majority.
Yes.
But we have always worked with them, accommodated them. So if AMCU was to come to us and say, we represent a minority, we agree, but we believe that the voice of this minority matter, can you accommodate us? We'll have no problem. But we'll have a problem if they will come to us and say, we have got the pangas and the guns. Now, we want you to listen, because we'll never allow anyone with criminal intention to hold us to ransom.
And Lisiba, I hear you. And I think it is significant, the point that you're making, that there are other unions with whom you communicate who also represent workers and who are in the minority, and we've never seen this kind of violence and clashes before. I take that point. However, when I spoke to AMCU, and we're battling to get hold of them now, when I spoke to them a couple of days ago, Franz Baleni was also a guest on, they're pointing the finger at NUM, saying that it is you who are instigating this violence because you are losing members. Many more miners are walking away and joining their union, and you don't like that as NUM, and you are attacking them.
Yeah, but you see, if you look at that, Reddy, every reasonable man, you see, in law, there's what is called the reasonable man on the street test. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't fly. Because if you are a majority union, like the NUM, and then you lose 1,000 workers who want to join them maybe as members, why would you go out to shoot members? Because members are like, it's like clients in a business sense. Why would you shoot a prospective member or a client because it's no longer with you? It doesn't make sense. We are saying, I gave a practical example the other day. I said, if you are the owner of a chain store, a chain supermarket that has got branches all over, and you have got a spaza shop somewhere at Gamulekane on the other part of Limpopo, why should I go to that site and go and shoot a customer that goes to buy at that spaza shop? It doesn't make sense. This thing does not exist.
So
there is no clash between us and them over membership.
So what happens now, Lisiba? What happens now? Over 30 people dead. Where do we go from here?
We want the people who organized an illegal gathering at Lonmin last Friday. We want these people to account. We want people who organized an illegal march at that mine to account. We want people who organized and forced other workers onto the top of the hill, who sat there and recruited some Sangoma from the Eastern Cape to account. because they have lied to these people that they will receive 12,500. They even said to them that they can fight the police, they won't die. They must account.
All right, Lisiba, thank you very much for calling us. Thank you for chatting to us. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Riti.
Lisiba Sishoka, NUM spokesperson, and we're still waiting for the AMCU representative, Jeff Mpahlele. He had agreed to speak to us, but now says he's not picking up the phone. Is that right? He's not picking up the phone, and my producers have been calling him for the last 20 minutes. You need to know this so that you don't argue that I'm giving certain people a chance and not others. Somebody posted a tweet that when Jackson phoned, that why am I giving the ANC a chance? Even the PAC and AMCU want to comment, and I said that Jackson Mthembu phoned us. So if this guy had airtime, he can also phone us. And as for AMCU and NUM, they are both guests after 10 o'clock. NUM came to the party, AMCU didn't. You decide. 24 minutes to 11 o'clock. We will be wrapping up our conversation on Lonmin, just taking a few calls from those of you who've been holding on since 9:10, believe it or not. We of course try to call you back. But first, let's go to Dr. Philly Reisenberger, who is, you're at the University of Cape Town and you do work in conflict resolution.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something that we're all trying to understand the source of the violence, and everybody say that we'll have commissions and everything. But in fact, I didn't hear yesterday and today anything about the education of conflict resolution that should start from the kindergarten. It must be part of the culture, as it's at home and schools. We don't have programs like this in the schools, which is the most important. You know, the other day, a mother came to me and she said that her child lost a bus ticket for the month that she bought. It's a lot of money for them. So she beat him up until she saw blood. And I was so shocked. And I said, what this child is learning? We're learning that instead of discussing or explaining our side and to learn to verbalize it, everybody resorts to beating up. Mothers beating up children, and the child go to school and beating up his friends in the yard. And later on, when they come with pangas. If from childhood we will have a culture, and I think it's a very important issue, especially for a country like South Africa, which we're coming from such a past that it wasn't before.
So, Dr. Philly, what do we do then with the adults? Is it too late for them?
No, I don't think it's too late, but I think that each one of us, I said to my friends, I said to people here that come to me or something, think about the country as a family. You will not beat up like we heard this morning in the program that a taxi got up and beat up a driver. Think about, even if somebody is making a mistake, think about him as your grandfather. Think about it, the old lady that was horrible or something, but think about her as the go-go, as your mother. As if we will just be a bit more patient and then say that we have been hurt, say that we have a problem, and discuss it with words. It's almost like one have the feeling that we're going back to be like the animal instinct of the stronger is the ruler, but it's not. We are not animals, and I think South Africa we have such nice people that when you walk in the street you feel love and everything. So we have to have the tool, and the tool has to be given from childhood. Not authorization. It means we don't shout at the kids and beat them up. We talk to them and we teach them how to tell other children also the same thing.
So at a national level, I mean, we've had things like the Moral Regeneration Program. During the World Cup, there was a change of behavior, more tolerance and all of that. I know what you're saying about school, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. So you are saying, even as adults, there are avenues, there are places, there's a message that can filter down.
Yes.
Okay.
Even television, when they're reporting something, the reporters many times they think that blood sells, journalists, but instead of going and discussing things, give very little stage or showing time to people who waving pangas and go and talk to people. People will feel that they would like to be heard instead of waving pangas.
All right, Dr. Philly, thank you very much for the call. Thank you. So it can be done, she says. Let's go to Jewel. Jewel is in Rustenburg and was one of the workers participating in the protest action. Jewel, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for calling. Which union do you belong to, or are you not unionized?
NUM.
Pardon?
NUM.
You belong to NUM. Okay. Yeah. You were there, I wasn't. Give us as briefly as possible your account, your perspective on what is going on at Lonmin.
Yeah, what really happened is this. We saw the machine boys, which most of them are affiliated to NUM, was one who started strike. And after that,
no, we can't hear him. We can't hear him. Mava, can you please sort that one out? He's one of the workers who was participating in the protest action, and he says he belongs to NUM. So it's very important to note all of this, because the perception has been NUM is not involved in the strike. It doesn't know anything about it. It's AMCU members who are involved in the strike. And I also read another report, I can't remember which newspaper, I beg your pardon, that said that some of the striking workers don't belong to any union. They don't belong to any union. They're just disgruntled workers who want to have their voices heard. Yaku in Morelita Park and King in Four Ways. I'm coming to you right after this. Yaku, hi.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
All I wanted to say is, watching the video from yesterday on television, I think the cops were justified with what they did, as they were attacked and they had to defend themselves. And I think our country shouldn't jump on the bandwagon of saying they were wrong. We should actually just admire them and say we're proud of them, because these guys are there to defend us. And I'm just glad it's not 35 police officers that died yesterday, and that they had the chance to defend themselves, and they did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have 3,000 people running at you. If you put yourself in their feet, you would do exactly the same thing. I don't know anybody that wouldn't. And I personally think that anybody that says the police officers handled the situation wrongly yesterday should rather just sit down and think what he would have done in that same situation.
Okay, and King in Four Ways, your perspective?
Really, I believe all the political parties should take blame for what has happened in Rustenburg. We have lack of leadership in this country. What you are going to see is that every political party is going to start pointing fingers. Instead of taking ownership, let them go to a Lekgotla and set standards the same way that you have done in the beginning of your program, where you have set a tone as to how you are going to carry your interviews throughout the day. The country as a whole, we should set a tone as to how are we going to protest. Get rid of this thing of protesting with tangas and assegai and stuff like that. And we should set a tone. Any political party or union that would protest and it displays violence, it must be banned. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't exist, because this thing is manifesting in the township. We are going to lose more life. This thing is manifesting in the townships. We're banning schools, we're banning everything, instead of just constructive demonstration. It can be done, it can be stopped right today.
Okay, let's go back to Jewel in Rustenburg. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Yes, Jewel, you are one of the workers who were participating in the protest action, and you say you belong to NUM. You were breaking quite terribly. Can you start again? Give us your account of what is happening.
Yeah, what really happened is this. It is started by a certain group, the so-called the machine boys. These guys were being convinced by a certain man called Stephen. And this Stephen is the one who brought the Sangoma and told the people that if this Sangoma gives you this muti, then you will not going to be shot by anyone. And he is the one who said we must stand up and even to kill people who don't want this protest. It is a very, very small percentage of workers who really wanted this strike. This is so-called Stephen is the one who is behind all these things.
But tell me, Jewel, we spoke to the NUM leadership that said there was a wage deal that was agreed to with the mining company, and they don't understand why workers would be out in the streets protesting and demanding a higher salary. Were you promised by whoever a higher salary, even as an NUM member?
The only answer I can give you, sister, is the leadership of NUM totally does not know what they are doing.
This is your union now. This is your union.
Yeah, this is my union. You know,
they took something officially, but underground they were moving to the people and saying, hey, this other union is not good, so these few people of their union must protest so that other people will come to the NUM.
So now that you are unhappy with NUM, are you going to join the other union, AMCU?
No. NUM is not a good organization. They must be reorganized and they started to know how to work professionally, not just playing football in a swimming pool.
Okay. Now, Joel, I want to know, you are a worker. I'm sure you've got your friends and your peers. South Africans don't understand why there's been so much violence, and they don't understand why you as workers, when you go out to protest, why are you carrying weapons?
We were forced to carry these weapons.
Tell me.
And if you can ask the other people, the media who were there are 4 guys who were standing at the entrance, and they told you must hold this weapon like this. So it was a forced matter. It only started by machine boys. These machine boys must be the ones.
Who are the machine boys, Joel? The security guards?
No. There are some people who drill holes underground.
Mm-hmm. So they had weapons first?
Yeah, they had weapons first. That's why at the first day the people were killed, because they were on their way going to work. So they show people that they are serious by killing people.
They are serious about their wage demands?
Yeah.
Okay. But then I don't understand. If they've killed people, why do the rest of you continue with the protest instead of stopping this violence? Because if it's the workers that are killing other workers, why do you not stop it? Why do you join them in protest?
If they know that you are opposite from them, there are no negotiations. Really, they do kill.
So basically, if you as Jewel were to stand up and say, I don't agree with this, guys, we shouldn't be killing people, we must march quietly, you would be the victim.
You would be the victim, and no way out. They will kill you definitely with the spears and the pangas.
Okay, that's Jewel in Rustenburg, one of the workers participating in the protest. What do you make of that? We'll hear from, just very quickly, let's go to Gia Nicolaides, who is in Rustenburg. Gia, good morning.
Good morning.
Just an update quickly since we started the show. What's happening now?
Well, at the moment, there's an uneasy calm here. I've just gone through the township area. We've tried to communicate with some of the miners. They aren't telling us too much at the moment. A lot of them seem to be trying to find out if their family members are being treated at a local hospital here. They say some of their family members didn't arrive home last night, and they suspect that they were injured during this clash yesterday. So they're arriving at the local hospital, trying to find out if their family members are there. Many of them are saying they don't understand why police opened fire on them, but at the same time, police are saying they retaliated because the protesters had firearms and they started shooting live rounds at them.
Mm-hmm. And that meeting with Ria Pieja, is that still going on? Or the press conference?
Yes, that's scheduled to take place from 11:30. So we are heading that way now, just to find out more details about the incident. As you can remember, the police have remained tight-lipped on the exact details of yesterday's incident. They still haven't given us a confirmed number of people who've died. We know that the number's sitting at around 36, and it could rise because many people were critically injured. But police have not come forward saying this many people have died and this many people have been injured. So we're waiting for exact details and figures from them, and hopefully they can clarify a number of issues for us.
Gia, will touch base with you after that briefing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gia Nicolaides and Ellen in Honeydew. I'm coming to you right after this. Quickly go to Ellen in Honeydew. You've been holding on for a very long time. Thanks for your patience.
No problem. Hi, Reddy. I'd just like to say in terms of this incident, and I think it's a very sad day in our country that this type of violence has to be resorted to. But if you look at the union and the company that was looking after the miners, they don't have the best interest of the miners at heart. I mean, this problem hasn't boiled up over the last week. This has been an ongoing with the workers working in terrible working conditions, not having socio-economic solutions within their communities where they live. They're living in informal settlements and working. Then you move forward into the protesters. There's no such thing as a peaceful protest in our country. A lot of the protests we have are based on violence. It's based on damage to property. It's based on people getting injured. It's based on people getting killed as well. And also, if you look at the police as a whole, the police really had no other option. 2 of their members had previously been killed. So with them coming back into that area, I would have brought a tank back, because they came back a lot more well prepared. They were stormed by protesters that should not even have been carrying weapons, and the police protected themselves. I mean, if we look at the stats of how many police officers in this country are killed per year, it's an unacceptable rate. 1 police officer a year murdered is 1 too many. And I think that people need to look at a way forward in terms of how to resolve matters without violence. Protesters should not be allowed to carry weapons, number one, because that's inciting everyone to commit violence, whether it's damaging something or hurting anyone else. And it is. It's a very, very sad day.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Alan. Alan calling us from Honeydew. Okay. We are moving on, but obviously putting an eye on the briefing by the police commissioner. It is scheduled for 11:30. If we need to interrupt our programming, then that's what we will do.